You get paid, pay the bills, put some money into savings, and spend what's left. But then another expense comes up, the money you thought was available is gone, and you're starting over again. The problem may be how your money is organized. I'll show you 4 ways people organize their money and which one gives you the most control. The important word here is control. Because having money and having control over that money are not the same thing. You might look at your checking account and see $1,500. But how much of that $1,500 is actually available? Some of it may need to cover groceries for the rest of the month. Some may be needed for an insurance payment coming next week. Some may belong to Christmas, a car repair, or another expense you know is coming. If all you see is $1,500, all $1,500 can look available. And that's where organization starts to matter. The more organized your money becomes, the easier it is to answer 3 questions. Where is my money? What is it already obligated to? And what is actually available for me to use? That's also why being broke and being financially disorganized aren't necessarily the same thing. You can genuinely not earn enough money to cover your expenses. But you can also have enough money come in and repeatedly run short because money needed tomorrow gets spent today. Those are different problems. And before you can decide what to fix, you need to know which problem you're actually dealing with. There are 4 common ways I see people organize, or don't organize, their money. And each one gives you a different level of control. The easiest way to see the difference is to look at 4 ways people organize their money. And with each one, ask 3 questions. Where is the money? How do I know what it's for? How much control does that give me? The first is what I call the money grab. The money usually lives in one place, your checking account, your wallet, or wherever you normally spend from. Your paycheck comes in. You pay whatever needs to be paid right now. You buy groceries. You get gas. You go shopping. And as long as money is still there, it can look available. That's what makes the money grab so easy. You don't have to organize much. But it's also what gives you the least control. If you have $500 in checking, you know where your money is. What you don't necessarily know is how much of that $500 is already needed for something else. Maybe $200 needs to get you through the rest of the month. Maybe $100 needs to cover something coming next week. Spend that money today and later it can feel like you didn't have enough. But you may have had enough. You just didn't separate the money you could spend from the money you still needed. The second level is what I'll call 3 buckets. Now instead of treating everything as one pile of money, you separate it by purpose. Maybe 1 bucket is for current spending. 1 is for savings. And 1 is for upcoming expenses like Christmas, insurance, school expenses, or annual bills. And these buckets don't necessarily have to be 3 different bank accounts. If your bank allows you to create savings buckets or sub-accounts, you can use those. You can use separate accounts. Or you can keep the money together and track the 3 amounts yourself. Where the money physically lives matters less than whether you can tell which money belongs to which job. That's a big improvement over the money grab. If you have $2,000 in the bank but $500 is in your upcoming expenses bucket, you know that $500 isn't available for today's spending. But 3 buckets still has a limitation. The categories are broad. You may know $500 is for upcoming expenses without knowing that $300 belongs to insurance and $200 belongs to Christmas. So you have more control, but you still don't have a complete picture. The third level is a budget. Most people don't like the word budget, but stick with me. You'll be glad you did. Now you get more specific. Housing has a job. Food has a job. Transportation has a job. Savings has a job. Instead of asking only where is my money, you can start answering, what is each part of my money supposed to do? And again, that doesn't mean you need a different bank account for every budget category. Your budget is the map. The money can still live in checking and savings. The budget tells you which part of that money belongs to which obligation. That's much more control. But as we learned in the last video, there's still a weakness if the budget assigns everything according to what you expect and leaves no room for things to change. That's where we get to the fourth level. A budget with margin and reserves. Now your money is organized not only around what needs to happen this month, but also around what you know will eventually happen and what might change. And this is where people sometimes make money management harder than it needs to be. You don't necessarily need 5 new bank accounts. You need a simple way to distinguish between money available to spend, money already obligated, and money you're deliberately protecting. Your reserve money could live in a savings account or savings bucket, so you're less likely to accidentally spend it. Your margin might remain in checking because it's there to give the monthly plan some breathing room, or you can keep it somewhere else if that makes it easier for you to protect. The important part is that when you look at your checking balance, you don't automatically think, "That's how much I can spend." Take gasoline. Suppose you allow $200 this month but only use $160. You could spend the remaining $40 somewhere else. Or you could leave it protected for transportation. Next month you might drive farther, gasoline prices might rise, or you might simply need $230 instead of $200. Now some of that money is already there. That $40 wasn't wasted. Its job just hadn't arrived yet. The same principle works with money you're holding for insurance, car maintenance, Christmas, annual expenses, or other obligations that don't fit neatly into 1 month. And it doesn't have to be complicated. You can organize those amounts on paper, in a spreadsheet, in your budgeting app, or with savings buckets at your bank. The method matters less than being able to answer, "Where is my money? What is it obligated to? And how much is actually available for me to use?" That's why the fourth approach gives you the greatest control. Not because you necessarily have more money. Because you have more information about the money you already have. And once you have that information, you can make much better decisions about what happens to the next dollar. This is how I keep it simple. I have one category that I can spend from guilt-free. I call it my allowance. If there's money in any other category, I consider that money spoken for. It's there to do the job assigned to that category. If money is left over, then I make a decision. I can leave it there because I know I'll need it later, or I can transfer it to my allowance. That means when I want to know how much money I can spend freely, I don't have to look at my bank balance and start doing math. I look at my allowance. Whatever is there is money I can spend without taking money away from something else. The cost of not knowing which money is actually available shows up in the decisions you make. You spend money today that was needed tomorrow. Then tomorrow arrives, and you have to pull money from savings, delay something else, use a credit card, or wait for the next paycheck. And that's where disorganization can start to look like an income problem. You get paid, everything seems fine, and then you're short again. So you think, "I just don't make enough money." And sometimes that's absolutely true. But sometimes enough money came in to cover what you needed. The problem was that money needed for one purpose was used for something else because you couldn't clearly see that it was already spoken for. And that can create a cycle. You get paid. You catch up. You spend what appears to be available. Then another obligation arrives and you're short again. So the next paycheck has to fix what happened with the last one. That's how you can earn enough money to cover your basic expenses and still feel like you're constantly starting over. And there's another cost. It's very difficult to make good financial decisions when you don't know what money is truly available. Should you put another $100 into savings? Can you afford to eat out tonight? Can you buy something you've been wanting? Are you ready to start investing? Those decisions become much easier when you know which money is available and which money already has another job. Because seeing money in your account tells you how much money you have. Being organized tells you how much of it you can actually make another decision with. And that's the information you need before you decide what to do next. And this is where the fourth level becomes important, because it isn't about having more money. It's about having more control over whatever amount you have. Let's compare two people who both have $2,000. The first person checks the account and sees $2,000. That's the information being used to make the next spending decision. The second person also has $2,000. But that person knows $700 is needed for expenses before the next paycheck. Another $300 is being held for an insurance payment. There's $250 in a car reserve. Another amount is being held as margin because some expenses fluctuate. And the remainder is what's actually available for the other things they've planned. Same $2,000. But the second person has more control because they have better information. That's what I mean by organizing your money. It doesn't necessarily mean opening 6 bank accounts or creating 40 budget categories. And it doesn't mean you have to reach level 4 tomorrow. It means knowing what the money you have is supposed to accomplish before you make another decision with it. The money grab gives you very little information. 3 buckets create some boundaries. A budget gives individual dollars specific jobs. And a budget with margin and reserves goes one step further by recognizing that some of those jobs don't happen on a perfectly predictable schedule. That's the greatest level of control of the 4. Not because the person is rich. Not because they have a bigger paycheck. Because they know where their money is and what it's obligated to. Someone earning a lot of money can still use the money grab. And someone earning much less can be highly organized. They may not have all the margin or reserves they want yet. That's okay. Organization doesn't create money that isn't there. But it does show you what the money you have can realistically do. And that information matters because now you can make a better decision about the next dollar. Maybe that dollar really is available to spend. Maybe it belongs in your car reserve. Maybe you're still building enough cash so one small problem doesn't send you to a credit card. Or maybe you've reached the point where investing is the right next move. The answer depends on where you are and where you're trying to go. But you can't make that decision very well until you know what your money is already doing. So here's where I would start. Don't create a new budget yet. Don't open another account. And don't move any money. Take the money you have right now and ask, what is this money already obligated to? Start with the obvious things. Bills that haven't been paid yet. Food. Transportation. Then look beyond this month. Is an insurance payment coming? Christmas? A car registration? A repair you know you'll eventually need? Anything else you've been treating as a future problem even though you already know it's coming? Now subtract those obligations from the money you thought you had available. Beth might open her account and see $1,800. At first, $1,800 feels pretty good. But then she identifies $700 needed before her next paycheck, $300 for an upcoming insurance payment and $200 she's been trying to keep for car repairs. She still has $1,800. Nothing disappeared. But now she understands what that $1,800 is supposed to do. And that changes what she can safely spend today. You may discover that you really don't have enough money to cover everything. That's useful information too. Because now you know the problem you're trying to solve. Or you may discover that more money was available than you thought, you simply weren't protecting it from other spending. Either way, you've replaced guessing with information. And that's the first step toward greater control. Your money doesn't become organized because you have a budget. It becomes organized when you know where it is, what it's obligated to, and what's actually available for you to use. The more clearly you can answer those questions, the more control you have over the financial decisions you make. Start where you are. You don't have to move from the money grab to a budget with margin and reserves overnight. But you should know which level you're operating at and what the next level of control would look like for you. There's one more problem we need to deal with, though. Some of the money we've been talking about may already have a job before it ever reaches your bank account. Your paycheck can arrive and look completely available even though much of it has already been claimed by decisions and obligations you made days, weeks, or even months earlier. That's the next question we need to answer. Your money is already committed before you receive it. And once you see those commitments clearly, you'll have a much more accurate picture of how much of your paycheck is actually yours to decide what to do with.